Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
This is where we, try to take some really essential groundwork, these foundational concepts, and really boil them down.
Yeah, extract the core insights, especially for folks who are maybe, juggling a lot.
Exactly. We're talking directly to you, the learner, especially if you've got that packed schedule, maybe running a business, managing a career, maybe you're a busy parent, perhaps a mother with a million things on your plate. Time is precious.
It really is. And you probably don't have, weeks to sit down and read through dense clinical manuals, right?
Right. So consider this your shortcut. It's the comprehensive guide to basically the first 3 chapters of this therapeutic program.
We're setting the stage. The goal today is to really nail down the why and the how behind the approach, the treatment rationale, the functional assessment model.
So when we're done, you'll really get the core issues. You'll understand the foundation before you even start practicing the specific skills.
That's the plan. We want to demystify what's actually driving emotional struggles. We need to understand 3 main things.
Okay. What are they?
First, what is this core emotional difficulty we keep talking about? Second, how do we tend to react to intense feelings in ways that, well, don't really help?
And third.
And third, crucially, how do we try to avoid or, control these feelings? And why does that strategy, which feels so good in the moment, actually backfire and keep us stuck?
And here's the really interesting part. The hook, maybe, that makes this so relevant if you're busy. It's based on what's called a transdiagnostic framework, which sounds technical, but
It just means we're looking beyond the specific label, whether you're dealing mostly with anxiety or depression or maybe OCD stuff.
right. Research shows that a lot of these different emotional disorders, they actually share a common root cause, a core mechanism.
Exactly. So we're diving past the surface symptoms right down to the engine that's driving the whole thing. It's efficient.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit more. This idea of a unified protocol, or UP, why the shift? Because usually, like we said, therapy has specific manuals for specific diagnoses.
Yeah, panic disorder gets treatment A, depression gets treatment B.
So why create one single program that aims to tackle, well, seemingly everything from anxiety to mood disorders and related problems? Where did that need come from?
It really came directly out of clinical practice. Therapists just
Yeah.
kept seeing the same thing over and over.
Was.
It's this issue of comorbidity. That just means people often have more than one diagnosis at the same time.
Okay. So someone comes in for help with, say, panic attacks.
Right. And they work hard, they get the panic under control, which is great.
But then,
But then maybe 6 months later, they're back or they're still struggling. But now it's more like generalized anxiety, just constant worry, or maybe a deep depression has settled in.
so the specific symptoms changed, but the underlying distress, that feeling of not being okay emotionally, it's still there.
Precisely. They get better in one specific area, but that core emotional vulnerability just seemed to pop up somewhere else, expressing itself differently.
That sounds really inefficient for everyone involved.
It was. Why make someone go through 3 different treatment manuals, learning slightly different skills each time, when the underlying problem seemed connected?
So researchers started thinking, if these disorders keep showing up together,
Then they must share something fundamental, some common characteristics in how people experience emotions, how they react to them, regardless of the specific label: panic disorder, GAD, social anxiety, OCD, PTSD, depression.
wow, that's a broad list.
It is. Even things often seen as distinct, like borderline personality disorder,
Yeah.
eating disorders,
Right.
even certain self-destructive behaviors. The research pointed towards a shared vulnerability related to emotion.
So the insight wasn't about the content of the worry, like I might crash the car versus nobody likes me.
Exactly. Or the specific behavior, like avoiding crowds versus repetitive checking. The core issue wasn't the symptom itself.
It was.
It was the way the person was responding to the internal distress, the difficulty with regulating emotion, the struggle to accept uncomfortable feelings. That seemed to be the common thread.
Okay, but I have to push back a little here. If this UP is so broad, covering all these different things, isn't there a risk it gets watered down?
That's a really important question.
Like, if someone has really severe ritualistic OCD, wouldn't a very specific, targeted treatment like traditional exposure and response prevention be better than something designed to be general?
It's a fair point. And traditional CBT approaches are highly effective. They often focus intensely on the specific content, the obsessive thought, the compulsive urge.
Right.
The UP doesn't ignore that content. You still work with the specific fears or thoughts,
Yeah.
but it shifts the primary focus to the process. How are you relating to that uncomfortable feeling, whatever it is?
So from the UP perspective, the OCD ritual, or maybe withdrawing when depressed.
They're seen as different forms of the same underlying strategy, avoidance. Trying to suppress or escape an unwanted internal experience. Maybe it's uncertainty, maybe guilt, maybe profound sadness.
Ah, I see. So by targeting that avoidance mechanism itself, the UP aims to provide a kind of master toolkit.
Exactly, a set of core skills that address the common denominator. And often, what happens is people see improvements across different areas simultaneously because they're tackling the root process. It's about efficiency.
Which, again, is exactly what someone with limited time needs. Learn one core set of skills that addresses the driver rather than chasing shifting symptoms with different approaches.
That's the goal.
Hmm.
So the treatment mission is unified. Identify and change those core reactions, those aversive responses, and especially the avoidant behaviors tied to unwanted emotions. If we can shift that, we can help across this wide range of problems.
Okay, so if the solution is about changing that core reaction, we first need to really understand the problem itself. You mentioned a cycle.
Yes, the emotional disorder cycle. It's often shown visually, like a loop. You feel an emotion, maybe anxiety, sadness, anger,
Then comes a
a
reaction,
negative reaction to it, a judgment. This is bad. I can't handle this.
followed by trying to get rid of it.
Right. Efforts to avoid or escape the feeling, which, paradoxically,
Backfires, leads to more intense emotion down the road. It feeds itself.
exactly. So we need to really spend some time dissecting the three core features that make up this cycle. Understanding these is fundamental. Recognizing them in your own life, especially when you're stressed or busy, that's the absolute first step.
Okay, let's break them down. Feature number 1.
This is the starting point. People who tend to struggle with emotional difficulties often experience their emotions, things like sadness, anxiety, guilt, anger, more frequently and more intensely than the average person.
Okay, so feelings just hit harder, more often.
Yes. And it's really crucial to emphasize something here for you, the listener. This isn't usually a choice. It's often got a biological, a temperamental component.
Meaning some people are just sort of wired that way.
Kind of. Their nervous systems might just react more strongly, maybe take a bit longer to settle back down. If you think of emotionality as a spectrum, they're often naturally on the more sensitive end.
Okay, but if it's biological, doesn't that sound kind of discouraging? Like, well, I'm just doomed to feel things intensely forever. Is that what we're saying?
That's a really central question.
Yeah.
And the biological reality might be, yes, you may always experience emotions more strongly than, say, your partner or a friend.
Yeah.
You can't just swap out your nervous system hardware.
Right.
But, and this is the absolute key insight of this approach, the intensity itself, that's not the problem we're trying to fix.
It's not, because
Yeah.
it feels like the problem.
I know it feels that way. But think about it. Emotions, even really strong ones, they give us important information. Fear can signal danger, sadness can signal loss. They have a function.
Okay, so if the intensity isn't the target, what is?
The problem comes in when that intense emotion triggers something else, an unwanted situation, or really negative reaction inside you.
Ah.
The feeling itself, however strong, it's temporary, it will pass. But if that intense wave of anxiety leads you to, say, cancel plans, or avoid an important call, or if intense anger leads you to yell at your kids, or if sadness leads you to just, shut down and isolate.
That's the stuff that causes the real long-term problems, the consequences of how you handle the feeling.
Exactly. The intensity only becomes a problem when it provokes these unhelpful responses or leads to negative outcomes. So our focus isn't on somehow eliminating intense feelings, which isn't really possible or even desirable. It's on changing the reaction to them.
That helps clarify. It's like the difference between the raw emotion, that physical wave, and the feeling, which includes our thoughts and judgments about it.
Right. And that brings us perfectly to the second feature. This one, the negative reaction, the judgment about the feeling. Arguably, this is even more important than the intensity itself.
Why more important?
Because this is where you add a whole second layer of suffering. People prone to emotional difficulties, they tend to judge their feelings really harshly, as dangerous or shameful or just completely unacceptable.
This is that inner critic stepping in, right? The moment that strong feeling hits.
Boom. The internal dialogue kicks in and is often critical, maybe even catastrophic. The manual gives great examples we hear all the time. I hate feeling this way. I must be falling apart. I shouldn't feel this anxious. I'm supposed to have it together, or I'm losing control.
Or turning it on yourself. I'm so stupid for feeling like this. Feeling fear means I'm weak.
Precisely. You take that natural biological response, the racing heart, the lump in your throat, and you attach these really negative critical thoughts to it. And that judgment, it transforms the experience. Sadness might turn into deep shame. Normal anxiety might escalate into full-blown panic.
Because you're fighting the feeling, judging it, instead of just letting it be.
You're adding distress about the distress. It's like pouring fuel on the fire.
That's often a huge light bulb moment for people, realizing they're not just battling the initial anxiety, they're battling their own internal war about the anxiety.
Exactly. And this aversion, this judgment, it can become so ingrained that sometimes, and this sounds really strange, at first, it can even extend to positive emotions.
Wait, really? People react negatively to feeling good. How does that work?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. But think about someone who's maybe gone through a lot of disappointment or trauma. They might finally start to feel a flicker of real joy or excitement about something new.
Okay.
And their immediate internal reaction might be fear. Like, uh-oh, I
Yeah.
shouldn't feel this happy. Something bad always happens when I feel good. Or if I let myself enjoy this, the crash afterwards will be even worse. Or feeling calm means I'm letting my guard down and I won't be ready for the next crisis.
Wow. So they actively dampen the good feelings.
Sometimes, yes. They might start worrying intentionally or find fault with a situation, almost to protect themselves from the anticipated pain of losing the good feeling. Or they find calmness uncomfortable because it feels unfamiliar or unsafe.
So the goal here isn't just about the negative emotions. It's about changing that judgmental reaction to any strong internal experience, positive or negative, intercepting that snowball effect.
Exactly. Which leads us directly into the third feature.
Yeah.
What people do about these feelings they've judged as bad or unacceptable,
They try to get rid of them.
they try to push them away, numb them out, escape the situation that triggers them, or somehow control them. This is avoidant coping. And this avoidance, it's the engine that keeps the whole cycle running.
But the tricky part is avoidance works. At least it feels like it works in the short term.
Oh, absolutely. It provides immediate relief. If I feel really anxious about giving a presentation and I call in sick,
The anxiety drops instantly.
right, your brain goes, yeah, dodge that bullet. That felt way better. Let's remember that strategy.
It's negative reinforcement, right? Taking away the bad feeling reinforces the behavior that took it away.
Precisely. The removal of the discomfort is a powerful, immediate reward. It strongly conditions you to use that avoidance strategy again next time you feel that way. Anxiety pops up, you avoid anxiety goes down, brain learns. Avoidance, good.
And that's how you get stuck. It feels like quicksand, like you said earlier. The more you fight to avoid feeling the feeling.
The stronger and more frequent those feelings often become over time. Because you never learn that you can actually survive the feeling. You never learn it's temporary.
You just keep reinforcing the belief that the feeling or the situation was too dangerous or overwhelming to face.
Exactly. So we need to really break down the different types of avoidance because it's not always obvious. It's not just, refusing to leave the house. Avoidance can be incredibly subtle.
Especially, I imagine, for someone juggling a million demands, like a busy parent or professional, they might be using these strategies constantly without labeling them as avoidance.
Absolutely. Recognizing these subtler forms is often a huge breakthrough. So let's detail the 5 main types described in the approach.
Okay, number 1.
First is overt situational avoidance. This is the most obvious kind. Physically staying away from situations or places that trigger the unwanted emotion.
Like declining to take the bus if you fear panic, avoiding social events if you have social anxiety, not going to the grocery store, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Clear avoidance of external triggers.
Okay, second type.
Emotion-driven behaviors. These are actions you take specifically because you're feeling an uncomfortable emotion, and the action's main purpose is to reduce that feeling, even if it looks functional on the surface.
Give me an example.
Okay, say you're in a meeting and start feeling really socially anxious. Excusing yourself to go to the bathroom or check your phone, not because you need to, but just to escape that feeling for a minute.
Or maybe calling your partner multiple times a day when you feel lonely or anxious just to get that immediate reassurance hit.
Right. The behavior is driven by the desire to escape the internal discomfort, not necessarily to solve an external problem.
Got it. Third type.
This one is key for busy people. Subtle behavioral avoidance. These are smaller, often less conscious ways we try to minimize contact with uncomfortable feelings or situations.
Hmm.
They can even look like efficiency sometimes.
Like what?
Rushing through a task you find stressful just to get it over with, instead of engaging with it mindfully. Chronic procrastination on things that make you anxious, like paperwork or difficult emails.
Or maybe rigidly controlling your diet or caffeine intake, not primarily for health, but because you're trying to prevent any physical sensations like a faster heartbeat that you interpret as anxiety.
That's a perfect example. Or maybe always having background noise like the TV or music to avoid silence where uncomfortable thoughts might surface.
Hmm.
Very subtle.
Okay. Number 4.
Cognitive avoidance. This is trying to control your internal world, your thoughts and feelings directly in your mind.
How do people do that?
Aggressively distracting yourself. Trying hard not to think about something upsetting, the classic don't think of a pink elephant problem, which just makes you think about it more. Thought suppression,
What about worry? Is that avoidance?
excessive worry, or rumination often functions as cognitive avoidance, even though it feels like you're trying to solve problems.
How so?
By constantly churning over a potential future problem, say, worrying nonstop about an upcoming trip, you feel like you're doing something productive, maybe controlling the anxiety. But really, you're often just mentally spinning your wheels. It's a distraction that keeps you from either accepting the uncertainty or taking actual productive steps in the present. You're avoiding the feeling of uncertainty right now.
That's a really important distinction. Okay, and the 5th type?
Use of safety signals.
Yeah.
These are things, people, or specific routines that you rely on to feel safe enough to enter or endure situations that trigger anxiety.
Like always needing to have your phone with you, or only going to certain places if your spouse is there.
Exactly. Or carrying medication just in case, even if you rarely take it. Or maybe sticking to an incredibly rigid daily schedule because any deviation feels threatening.
And the problem with safety signals is
They prevent you from learning that you can actually handle the situation without them. Every time you use the safety signal and survive, you implicitly reinforce the belief that the situation was dangerous and you only got through it because of the signal. It maintains the fear.
so pulling it all together, the ultimate bullseye for this whole treatment program is to change this ingrained habit of avoidance in all its forms.
That's it. By learning to notice the urge to avoid and gradually acting differently, approaching instead of escaping, you break that cycle of negative reinforcement. You learn through experience that you can tolerate the discomfort.
And by doing that, the emotion itself starts to lose its power over your life. You're not controlled by the need to avoid feeling it.
Okay, theory's great, but let's make this concrete. The best way to really see how these 3 features, the intense emotion, the negative judgment, the avoidance work together, is to look at real-life examples.
Right, applying the model. The source material gives us 4 case examples that show how this same core mechanism can look really different on the surface. We're moving into functional assessment now.
Exactly. Let's start with Amira. She's a 24-year-old graduate student. Her story really highlights how guilt can fuel avoidance.
Okay, so for Amira, what's the strong emotion?
For her, it's primarily intense guilt and chronic worry. She worries a lot about meeting family expectations, about money, and especially about falling behind on her schoolwork and deadlines.
And the negative belief or judgment about those feelings?
Highly self-critical. She feels overwhelming guilt when she's not working, thinking she's letting her family down, that she doesn't deserve any enjoyment until everything is done perfectly. The guilt itself feels like proof of her failure.
So how does that drive her avoidance? It sounds like it might be subtle.
It is, and very relevant to anyone under pressure. Her main avoidance is a form of subtle behavioral escape. When the guilt and anxiety about schoolwork hit, she ends up surfing the internet for hours.
Ah, the procrastination trap.
Exactly. It provides instant relief from the guilt. She escapes the feeling. But of course, it makes the workload pile up, which then fuels more guilt later. She also uses overt social avoidance. She's reluctant to mingle at department events, holds back during coffee hour because she feels she hasn't earned it or is behind everyone else. This reinforces her sense of isolation.
So the internet surfing, which might look like laziness or lack of discipline, is actually an escape behavior driven by overwhelming guilt.
Precisely. It's serving a function, just not a helpful one long term.
Okay, let's shift to Kevin. He's a 58-year-old executive, and his struggle looks quite different, more about physical sensations.
Right. For Kevin, the strong emotions manifested physically. Intense panic attacks, racing heart, couldn't catch his breath, dizziness, feeling unreal, detached, classic panic symptoms.
And his aversive reaction, the negative belief.
Catastrophic interpretation of those physical feelings. He wasn't just feeling his heart race, He believed it meant he was about to lose control of the car, or have a heart attack, or maybe even go crazy. These thoughts happened out of the blue, making them feel even more terrifying.
So the fear wasn't just of the feeling, but of what the feeling meant.
Exactly. He interpreted normal, albeit intense, physical arousal as a sign of imminent disaster. That interpretation was the fuel for the panic.
And his avoidance, it sounds like it became pretty extensive.
It did, significantly limiting his life. His main avoidance was situational. He stopped driving on highways altogether. Then it spread to avoiding airports, elevators, even crowded shopping malls. Any place where escape might be difficult or where he feared having a panic attack publicly.
Did he use safety signals?
Yes, definitely. His cell phone became one always needing it to call for help if needed. And he carried specific medication, relying on his presence even if he didn't take it. Each time he used these or avoided a situation, it reinforced his belief that the situations and his own body's reactions were fundamentally dangerous and that he couldn't cope alone.
Okay, moving to Marco. He's a firefighter dealing with the aftermath of trauma and grief from a serious incident at work. His picture involves more anger and numbness.
Marco's core strong emotions are complex, stemming from the trauma, deep grief and sadness, but also intense anger, irritability, maybe feelings of injustice about what happened.
And his internal reaction, the negative belief.
Very self-critical, tied into his professional identity. Thoughts like, why can't I just get over this? I'm a firefighter. I'm supposed to be tough. I shouldn't be feeling this way. He judged his natural grief and trauma response as a personal failing, a sign of weakness.
How did that judgment manifest as avoidance for him?
Several ways. Cognitively, he tried really hard not to think about the memories, not to talk about his feelings, believing suppression was the strong thing to do, pushing it all down.
Trying to control the internal experience.
Right, and behaviorally, his avoidance was more subtle but damaging to his relationships. He became irritable, snapping at his wife, even the dog. He started pulling away from friends, stopped engaging in hobbies he used to enjoy.
And that irritability, that pushing people away, that served an avoidant function.
Absolutely. It created distance. It meant he didn't have to engage emotionally, didn't have to be vulnerable, didn't have to risk conversations that might trigger the underlying grief and pain he was desperately trying not to feel. The anger acted as a shield.
That's a really powerful illustration of how anger can be secondary, a defense against deeper, more vulnerable feelings like sadness or fear.
Very common. The anger successfully keeps people at arm's length, which means he avoids the pain.
Okay, lastly, let's look at Rachel. She's a 33-year-old stay-at-home mother, and her struggle revolves around routine and anxiety about small disruptions. This feels very relevant for our audience.
Yes, Rachel's case really speaks to the pressure many parents feel. Her primary strong emotion is anxiety, coupled with intense frustration that flares up whenever things deviate even slightly from her carefully planned routine. A child wakes up late, traffic delays things.
And the negative belief driving that.
It's a fear of losing control. She interprets these minor deviations not just as inconvenient, but as signs that everything is about to unravel, potentially leading to disaster for her family. She catastrophizes the small stuff.
And her avoidance. It sounds like it's all about maintaining that control.
Exactly. Her avoidance strategies are primarily safety signals and subtle behaviors focused on rigid routine maintenance. She keeps an incredibly meticulous schedule for everything. She might put away laundry the second it's done, not just for tidiness, but just in case. The visual clutter contributes to a feeling of chaos and loss of safety.
Maybe specific rituals.
Could be. The example given is rubbing a worry stone in her pocket, a constant, subtle safety behavior to manage anxiety spikes. These actions are her way of trying to control the inherently uncontrollable aspects of life with kids.
But the downside is,
The avoidance keeps her constantly hypervigilant, trapped by the schedule. It prevents her from being flexible, from being truly present and spontaneous, because any deviation feels too threatening. It narrows her life.
so looking across Amira, Kevin, Marco, and Rachel, the warrior student, the panicky executive, the grieving firefighter, the routine-bound mother, what's the big unifying takeaway here?
It's the underlying structure. Despite the incredibly different surface symptoms, guilt, panic, anger, anxiety about routine, the mechanism keeping them stuck is functionally identical.
Say it again.
You have 1. A strong, often unwanted, naturally occurring emotion. 2. That emotion gets filtered through a highly negative, often self-critical judgment or belief. 3. That leads to efforts to avoid, escape, or control the feeling. 4. That avoidance provides short-term relief but ultimately backfires, strengthening the emotion and the negative belief over time.
And the treatment, the U-key, is designed to interrupt that three-part cycle, no matter what the specific emotion or symptom looks like on the outside.
That's the core idea. It targets the process, not just the content.
Okay, we've thoroughly dissected the problem, that cycle of intense feelings, negative judgments, and avoidance. Now let's talk solution. What's the overall goal of this treatment program we're laying the foundation for?
The big picture goal is really about building emotional resilience. It's about fundamentally changing your relationship with your emotions.
Not getting rid of them, then.
Definitely not. It's not about eliminating fear or sadness or anxiety. Those are normal, human, often helpful feelings. It's about becoming more accepting of them when they show up, learning to respond to them in more flexible, productive ways, instead of automatically fighting or avoiding them.
So increased awareness, more adaptive responses.
Exactly. And the program structures this learning process logically. The source material uses a great metaphor of building a house. It helps visualize how the skills build on each other.
I like that. So where do we start building? What's the foundation?
The foundation or base of the house is all about setting goals and maintaining motivation. Before you start learning skills, you need to be really clear on why you're doing this work, what truly matters to you.
So not just, I want to feel less anxious.
Right. More specific, more values-driven. For a busy mother, maybe the goal is, I want to be able to be present and patient with my kids, even when I'm feeling overwhelmed or anxious. Or for an executive like Kevin, I want to be able to drive on the highway again so I can visit my clients without debilitating fear. Knowing your why fuels the effort, especially when it gets tough.
Okay, foundation laid. What's on the ground floor?
The ground floor is understanding your emotions. This is the analysis piece, really digging into your own experiences. Before you can change something, you need to understand it.
How do you do that?
You learn to break down your emotional episodes into their three core components, the things you can actually observe. What were the thoughts going through my mind? What were the physical sensations in my body? And what were my behaviors or urges? What did I actually do or feel like doing? Getting clear on this ABC effect, feeling, behavior, cognition, thought, is essential.
Makes sense. Then we move up into the main part of the house.
Yes, the core skills floors. These are floors 2 and 3, the bulk of the treatment. These skills are specifically designed to target and dismantle those three core features of emotional disorders we discussed.
Okay, what's the first core skill area? Maybe tackling that negative judgment piece.
That would be mindful emotion awareness.
Yeah.
This is the foundational skill of learning to observe your emotional experiences, thoughts, feelings, sensations, non-judgmentally. Just noticing them as they are without immediately reacting or getting caught up in criticism.
Like stepping back and observing the wave rather than being swept away by it.
Exactly. It draws a lot from mindfulness practices. It helps you create a little space between the feeling and your reaction. So instead of I'm falling apart, you learn to just notice, okay, there's anxiety. I feel it in my chest. It directly targets feature 2, that negative reaction.
Okay, so once you can observe without immediate judgment, what's next? Maybe tackling the thoughts themselves.
Precisely. That's cognitive flexibility. This is where you learn to challenge and reappraise those negative beliefs and automatic thoughts that fuel the distress.
So questioning thoughts like, I'm going to fail, or this feeling is unbearable.
Yes. You learn to look at those thoughts not as absolute truths, but as hypotheses. Are they really 100% accurate? Are there other ways to view the situation? You practice generating more balanced, realistic interpretations. This directly challenges those rigid negative thinking patterns.
What about the physical side? Like for Kevin, the intense physical panic sensations were terrifying.
Absolutely crucial. That's addressed by understanding and confronting physical sensations. This involves skills, often called interoceptive exposures, where you deliberately practice tolerating uncomfortable physical sensations in a safe way.
Like intentionally making your heart beat faster or feeling a bit dizzy.
Exactly. By doing that in a controlled way, you learn that these sensations, while uncomfortable, are not dangerous. They don't actually lead to catastrophe. You decouple the physical feeling from the fear reaction. This is huge for panic.
Okay, that covers intensity and judgment. What about the avoidance? Feature 3.
That's tackled head-on with countering emotional behaviors. This is the action piece. You learn to identify your specific avoidance patterns, situational, subtle, cognitive safety signals, and then systematically practice acting opposite to the urge to avoid.
So if anxiety tells you to leave the party, you practice staying. If guilt tells you to procrastinate, you practice starting the task, even for just 5 minutes.
Exactly. You lean into the discomfort instead of running away. You replace the avoidance habit with an approach habit, step by step. This is where you directly break the reinforcement cycle of avoidance.
And all these skills, awareness, flexibility, tolerating sensations, countering avoidance, they all build towards the top floor, the pinnacle or attic.
Yes, which is emotion exposure. This is where it all comes together. Exposure is about purposefully and systematically confronting the situations, thoughts, feelings, and sensations that you fear and typically avoid.
But now you're armed with the skills from the lower floors.
Precisely. You go into the feared situation using mindful awareness, cognitive flexibility, and the willingness to tolerate discomfort without resorting to avoidance or safety behaviors. It's practice under pressure.
And why is that exposure piece so critical?
Because it's the most powerful way to truly learn at a deep emotional level that you can handle these feelings and situations. You get repeated experiences that contradict your fears. You learn the emotion is temporary, it's survivable, and the feared catastrophe doesn't happen. This builds profound acceptance and reduces the emotion's power.
So it feels counterintuitive. The goal is almost to welcome the feelings you've spent your life trying to escape.
In a way, yes. To learn to make space for them, knowing that fighting them or avoiding them is actually the source of the long-term suffering, not the feelings themselves. The whole house is built on that premise.
Okay, we've got the model, we've got the skill structure, but there's another piece that's apparently critical, especially outlined in Chapter 3. Keeping records. Monitoring.
Yes, objective tracking. And let's be honest, for someone already feeling overwhelmed and short on time, being asked to fill out forms every week can feel like the last thing they want to do.
Right, seriously. More paperwork. Why is this non-negotiable? Why is it so important?
It serves a couple of really vital functions.
Yeah.
First, it just keeps the skills top of mind. It encourages that consistent daily practice because, like any skill, emotional regulation skills get rusty if you don't use them.
Okay, reinforces practice. What else?
Second, and maybe even more importantly, it allows you, the learner, to track your progress using objective data. This is absolutely essential, especially during those times when you feel like you're stuck or even going backwards.
Because our feelings about how we're doing can be misleading.
Hugely misleading. Without objective data, we easily fall into what's called subjective monitoring.
And subjective monitoring is?
It's basically just relying on your overall feeling or memory of the week. Thinking things like, ugh, I had a terrible week, my anxiety was awful, or that panic attack ruined everything.
Focusing on the worst moments.
Often, yes. And using really global judgmental language. It lasted forever. It was unbearable. Your current mood heavily colors your memory of the past week. If you had one really bad day, subjectively, it can feel like the entire week was a disaster.
And that obscures any progress you might have actually made on other days.
Exactly. It hides the times you did use a skill or the moments you didn't avoid something. It can be incredibly discouraging and just feeds into self-criticism, making you feel like, see, this isn't working.
So objective monitoring is the antidote to that. It's like shifting from being the victim of your feelings to being a scientist observing them.
That's a great way to put it. Objective monitoring is about recording the facts. How many times did I feel intense anxiety this week? What triggered it? How long did it actually last? And, crucially, how did I respond? What was I thinking? What did I do? What did I feel physically?
Getting specific.
Yes. Focusing on the data, not just the drama. It gives you a much more realistic, proportional view. You might realize, okay, that panic attack felt awful, but it actually peaked for about 10 minutes, not forever. Or, yes, I felt anxious before the meeting, but I stayed, and I used my breathing technique. It highlights the nuances, the ups and downs.
It stops that catastrophic thinking that just wastes time and energy.
Exactly. And the program provides specific tools to make this easier, usually filled out once a week.
What are the main ones?
The core tools are typically an anxiety scale and a depression scale. These don't just measure symptom severity, like how anxious you felt on a scale of 1 to 10. They also track functional impairment. Meaning, how much are these symptoms actually interfering with important areas of your life, your work, your schooling, your home life, your relationships? For a busy parent, this is key. Progress isn't just feeling 10% less anxious. It's being able to take your kids to the park without overwhelming dread, or managing a difficult conversation at work without needing to escape. It connects the feelings to real-life functioning.
Are there other scales used too?
Often, yes. There might be an other emotion scale to track things like anger, guilt, or shame, especially if those are primary issues for someone. And really importantly, there's often a positive emotion scale.
Tracking the good stuff too. Why is that so vital?
Because when we're struggling, our attention naturally narrows to the negative. We forget or discount moments of joy, connection, excitement, or contentment. Tracking positive emotions forces you to consciously scan your week for those experiences, however small. It reminds you that your emotional life is more complex than just distress. It fights that negativity bias.
Okay, scales for symptoms, functioning, other emotions, positive emotions. What else?
The progress record chart?
hmm
This is where you take the scores from your weekly scales and plot them on a graph over time.
Ah, the visual.
Yes, for many people, seeing that line graph is incredibly powerful because progress in therapy is never a straight line down. It always has ups and downs, peaks and valleys.
So when you have a really tough week and you feel like you've failed or gone all the way back to square one,
You look at the chart, and maybe you see, yes, there's a spike this week. Your anxiety score went up. But you can also see the overall trend over the past, say, 2 months is still heading downwards. That spike is just a temporary valley in a longer journey of improvement.
it provides perspective. It separates the data point from the disaster narrative.
Exactly. It serves as that objective, non-judgmental reminder. Okay, this week was hard, maybe because of external stressors like lack of sleep or a work deadline, but the skills are still generally working. This is information, not proof of failure. I need to keep practicing. It helps maintain motivation through the inevitable rough patches.
So for that busy mother who feels totally defeated after a chaotic week, the chart says, look at the bigger picture. This bump doesn't erase the progress. Keep going.
Precisely. It empowers you to be that scientist of your own experience, using data to guide your efforts, rather than getting swept away by subjective interpretations that can waste so much precious time and mental energy. #outro.
Wow. Okay, that was incredibly thorough. A really essential deep dive into the absolute foundations of this approach. Let's try and synthesize the main takeaways.
I think there are three core things to hold on to. First, many different emotional difficulties, despite looking different on the surface, seem to be unified by that common cycle. Intense emotions,
Filtered through negative judgments and beliefs.
which then trigger efforts to avoid or escape those feelings. That avoidance is key.
Second takeaway.
The treatment program, the House of Skills, is designed to systematically dismantle that cycle. Not by eliminating emotions, but by building skills like mindful awareness, cognitive flexibility, and crucially, the willingness to counter avoidance and approach discomfort through exposure.
Changing your relationship to the emotions.
Exactly. And third, objective tracking using those scales and the progress chart isn't just busy work. It's the essential tool for seeing the real, often nonlinear path of change, helping you stay motivated and informed, especially when life feels chaotic.
Got it. Intensity, judgment, avoidings are the problem. Awareness, flexibility, approach are the solution. Tracking keeps you on course.
That's a great summary.
Now, as we wrap up, we always like to leave our listeners with something to chew on, a provocative thought that builds on what we've discussed.
Okay.
We touched briefly on how the source material mentions cultural context, how culture shapes how we understand emotions, and what's considered an appropriate response.
Right. Like how in some cultures, maybe more collectivist ones, like in parts of East Asia, certain behaviors that might look like social avoidance in the West, like prioritizing group harmony over individual assertion, or not directly expressing anger, might actually be seen as adaptive, polite, or necessary for social cohesion.
Whereas in more individualistic cultures, assertiveness might be more valued.
Exactly. The cultural lens matters.
So here's the thought for you, the listener, as you prepare to maybe challenge some of your own long-standing patterns. How might recognizing that your current strategies, even the ones that aren't working for you anymore, like maybe excessive people-pleasing or avoiding conflict at all costs, or that rigid routine Rachel clung to, how might recognizing that these were likely once attempts to cope?
Maybe strategies you learned growing up may be influenced by your family or cultural background as ways to feel safe or maintain harmony or just get by.
How might seeing them not as character flaws, but as old strategies, perhaps even culturally reinforced ones that you developed for good reasons back then, allow you to approach learning new skills now with more curiosity? And maybe less shame.
That shift in perspective can be incredibly powerful. Viewing those ingrained avoidance patterns not as something wrong with you, but simply as outdated coping mechanisms that no longer serve you well. It fosters self-compassion.
And that self-compassion might just be the necessary ingredient to give yourself permission to gently let go of the old strategies and bravely step into trying something new, something more adaptive for the life you want to live now.
It really can be. Moving from self-criticism to self-understanding as the foundation for change.
Yeah.
That's a powerful place to start.